So we got turn number 9 done, July 1940. So we're heading into January 41. And things slowed down considerably from the last turn. War broke out in Europe and the Pacific last turn. There was a lot of combat going on, not nearly as much this past turn. Starting in Europe, the Germans did go into Yugoslavia, and they successfully conquered the Yugoslavian army. The only thing that survived was a torpedo boat destroyer that went over and joined the British fleet in Sea Zone 80. But the Germans brought down, I think, 3 fighters, a couple of tacticals, and a medium bomber, along with 3 or 4 infantry. They didn't lose any planes, and 1 infantry survived to be able to occupy Yugoslavia. Other than that, not a lot going on for Germany. They did go ahead and send 3 subs out, and they're convoying here in Sea Zone 22, and they took the maximum $5 off the British for the convoy rating rolls. Other than that, as you can tell from Germany's purchases, they're already starting to gear up for a future conflict with the Soviet Union. So they bought 5 mechs, which they have advanced mechanized infantry. They put those in West Germany, 5 self-propelled artillery, and 3 medium armor they bought. Also, units that were already on the board are starting to make their way migrating to the east. So 4 more mechanized are now in West Poland, and then a couple of light armor and 5 medium armor are down in Bavaria, starting to make their way towards the future Eastern Front, although that's probably several turns away at this point. And that was about it for Germany. As we can see, Rommel is down in Paris, organizing the transfer of power from the military to civilian authorities, and then he will start making his way by train to Berlin to have a meeting with the Fuhrer to discuss future plans, especially in the East. So that was about it for Germany. They're up to collecting $51 minus bonuses, so they're up over $60, plus they get the wartime bonus roll as well. So Germany's sitting pretty good. As far as the Russians, they finished off annexing the Baltic states. So they took Latvia. They also went ahead and took the last Mongolian territory. It was just an empty territory worth no IPPs, but they went ahead and took that. They stayed where they were in Iran. I'm not sure where this Russian force is going to go from here, but they're down in Iran for now. The Russians bought, this was the first turn they were able to buy medium armor, so they went ahead and bought 4 medium armor. So they've got a decent mechanized force in Urel Kursk, 4 medium armor, 4 light armor, and a couple of motorized infantry. As far as the British go, they put all their money down in London. So Churchill is ordered reinforcements for the Royal Air Force. So they put 3 fighters on the board this turn. They also went ahead and used a tactical bomber to come over, and they were trying to take out this German transport. There was also a destroyer there, and the tactical got a hit, but the destroyer got a hit in return. So they canceled each other out, destroyed each other, and the German transport is still there, but the British can just fly a fighter over there this turn and take out the transport. They're going to also probably, another reason to buy the fighters is they're going to have to start putting aircraft on maritime air patrol to deal with these German subs that are currently convoying them. That was about it for the British. The fleet and the med here in Sea Zone 80 stayed where it was. Again, just kind of keeping an eye on the Italians, giving them plenty of incentive not to join the conflict. Montgomery's in Cairo, ready to defend if the Italians do decide to enter the conflict and make a push for eastern Egypt. That was about it for the British. One thing I forgot to mention last turn is Free France has established their new capital here in Cameroon, and with the port, they're able to get Lend-Lease, and the U.S. did send them a militia this past turn as part of Lend-Lease. Besides that, the U.S. was hit the income threshold so that they could move some units around. So they started moving some units down here to start making their way to the Pacific, and they built up a decent little fleet off of New York, a fleet carrier, 3 destroyers, 3 transports, and 2 coastal subs. So once they're into the conflict, they'll start bringing some units over, maybe to Africa or Europe. The only problem with coming over to North Africa is all these territories are Vichy, so if the Allies come into one of these territories, that brings the Vichy into the conflict under German control. So not that Vichy France has a lot to make the Allies worried about, but for now, they're trying to limit as much as possible the Allies that join with Germany at this point. As far as the Spanish Civil War goes, it's all but over. The tactical the Germans had bought the turn before played a big part. Again, on this turn, they took out the lone Republican infantry that was left, and now there's just a single territory left for Republican Spain, and that's empty, so that'll fall this turn. Russia could have sent another infantry, but with a tactical and a artillery being able to attack that lone infantry, if Russia had sent it, it almost definitely would have died for no reason. So Russia kind of threw in the towel on this one, and for the second game in a row, the Spanish Civil War will end in a victory for the Nationalists, Franco's forces. That's about it on the European side of the map. In the Pacific, so Japan, again, continued their offensive against the British Commonwealth. Some good, but also some bad. So they went ahead and picked up a couple of empty territories in India, worth $1 apiece. They also attempted to take British Malaya, and that completely backfired. So the coastal artillery took out a destroyer, and then Japan was only landing with 2 infantry and a motorized, and the motorized can't land in the first wave, and the fortress got 2 first strike artillery rolls and got 2 hits, so they killed both of the Japanese infantry, so Japan couldn't even go ahead with the invasion because they had no infantry that would be able to successfully land. So they were turned back from taking British Malaya this turn. Other than that, not a lot for Japan to do. They started bringing their transports back to Japanese home waters from down in the South Pacific. So they're going to be able to pick up some of the infantry in Japan itself this next turn and move units around. They also completed a fleet carrier, a heavy cruiser, and put down 2 destroyers. So building up a third fleet for the Japanese there off of Tokyo. They do still have these 2 fleets down in the South Pacific, one off of Java and one off of Sumatra. Really not anything the Allies can do about that right now. They did buy 2 cavalry that they put down in Calcutta, courtesy of the 2 minor complexes they have. So they'll be able to take the rest of these vacant FEC territories here on turn 10. As far as Anzac, again, not a whole lot they can do. They could venture out with their couple of ships, but then they'd be easy prey for the Japanese, so they kind of just stayed at home. They did buy a fighter this last turn, giving a little bit more, a better unit in terms of the defense role in case the Japanese were to come after Sydney. The U.S. Finished off a fleet carrier. They moved up a couple of battleships, another stage on the production chart. So now they got 2 fleet carriers there, a couple of battleships, a couple of heavy cruisers, 3 destroyers, 2 transports, a sub, and 2 coastal subs. So they've got a pretty decent fleet off of San Francisco. Not enough to challenge the Japanese if the Japanese were to combine all of their naval units, but probably enough to take on any one of the 3 Japanese fleets that Japan currently has operating. In the Spanish Civil War, Chiang Kai-shek is holed up with just about the last remnants of the KMT. So there wasn't any combat either way, but the KMT is down to just 2 territories that have any units in it, 4 infantry up here in northern China, and then Chiang Kai-shek trying to hold off with about a half a dozen infantry. So I don't think the CCP will be able to finish off the KMT this turn, just because the CCP doesn't have a lot of units with any kind of real offensive punch. It's all mostly just infantry. They do have a cavalry and a mountain infantry down here, but I can see maybe this northern territory falling, Peking that's empty, being controlled by the CCP, maybe going to Nanking with an infantry and just kind of completely surrounding this last possible KMT stronghold down in southern China. And the CCP did get another warlord, the last one to join the cause. And that was pretty much about it. One thing I wanted to bring up with you guys, and I wasn't really sure, so let me know what you guys think. So on turn number 8, as Japan, they went to war with the British. So they invaded, obviously, Calcutta, took Calcutta, and that is a declaration of war on not just the FEC, but the entire British Commonwealth. So the UK, FEC, and ANZAC. And it's a big deal because it triggers an increase in the U.S.'s wartime income. So they get 5 D12 rolls for the Japanese declaring war. It specifically states declaring war on either the UK or France, and that obviously includes the British Commonwealth, which Japan did. So the U.S. got 5 D12 rolls, and again, I think they rolled a 27. Now, there's other actions Japan or the Axis in general can take to increase the U.S. Wartime economy as well. And one of them for Japan is attacking any other neutral gives the U.S. 2 more D12 rolls. So if you remember, Japan also on the same turn attacked the Netherlands, these Dutch islands here in the South Pacific. Now, I didn't give the U.S. the 2 additional D12 rolls for that, and someone had mentioned that they thought I should have. And here's where I think there's, again, a kind of a gray area. And not, people interpret it, rules different ways. And here's an instance where I think it could kind of go either way. So my thinking in terms of not giving the U.S. the 2 additional D12 die rolls for Japan going into these Dutch islands is because at the end of Germany's portion of that turn, Germany obviously had declared war on the Netherlands and had captured the Netherlands itself. So once that happens, all of the Dutch possessions, both territory-wise and military unit-wise, now becomes controlled by the UK, and they can distribute the money they collect. First of all, they collect the money from the territories, and they can distribute the money any way they want. They don't have to use it to, let's say, build defenses for the remaining Dutch territories. They could spend the money completely any way they want on something that completely benefits the UK itself. Not only that, but they take control of the remaining Dutch military units. So, for instance, down here in the South Pacific, there were several ships. I believe there was a destroyer and a coastal sub, and maybe a transport and a sub. And then, as you can see, there still are some ground units here in Java. So the British, in essence, have incorporated the Dutch, in a sense, into the Commonwealth. So my thinking was, once Japan declared war and went against the FEC, that in essence was also the same declaration of war on the Dutch, because they were already now controlled by the UK. And the UK is getting all of the benefits of controlling the Dutch, again, from the territories, the IPPs they generate, the military units, all of it. So I didn't really see it as a separate, the Dutch being a separate entity from the UK. So that's why I didn't give the US those 2 additional die rolls. Now, clearly, if Japan would have went into, let's say, China or the Soviet Union, okay, those are completely separate from the UK, and I would have given the income increase in terms of die rolls to the US. But because the UK was at the time controlling the Dutch, I didn't think that, you could separate from the Dutch and the UK from each other. So I didn't give the US those 2 additional die rolls. So some people think that I should have. Be curious to think what your guys' interpretation of that rule is. It's obviously clear cut in the sense that Japan attacks any neutral, it's 2 D12 die rolls for the US, but I thought it was kind of gray because of the UK controlling the Dutch. And the problem is, like, let's say, for instance, that Japan didn't go into these Dutch territories down here. They completely stayed away from the Dutch and only attacked Calcutta. So they only went after the FEC. So now, obviously, the entire UK Commonwealth is at war with the Japanese. But then, on Britain's part of the turn, even without Japan having gone into and attacked any of these Dutch territories, the UK could use the Dutch units on the board, and there were several ships, to then attack the Japanese, incorporate them in with an attack from maybe some FEC units, some ANZAC units, maybe if the UK had some of their own units over here, maybe a naval force in the Pacific. So all of that, they could have used those Dutch units to attack the Japanese because they were in essence part of the UK. So I just didn't think that was fair that, the UK could then, if Japan stayed away from attacking the Dutch, could then turn around and use all those Dutch forces as part of a coalition, let's say, of the Commonwealth to attack the Japanese. So that was my thinking in terms of not separating the Dutch and the UK and considering them all basically one. And that is why the U.S. didn't get those 2 additional die rolls. But like I said, I think it's kind of a gray area, just specifically because of the Dutch, because it specifically says in the rules that the Dutch are controlled / aligned to the UK once they go to war with an Axis power. And the UK, again, has complete control over all Dutch territories and units. So I just think in the case of the Dutch themselves, I don't think that there should be you should differentiate between the Dutch and the Commonwealth. But if you guys think differently, definitely would love to hear your thoughts and see what you think. The U.S. did get a good die roll this last turn. I think they got 11. So they're up to like $59. They only need 63 to be able to declare war. So Japan is definitely going to go to war with the U.S. this turn. Well, another thing I forgot to mention is the Japanese did not use their sneak attack when they did go to war with the British Commonwealth on turn 8. So they still have that sneak attack they can use against the United States. Now, the United States Navy is obviously outside of the range of Japan, but they can use their sneak attack down here on the Philippines. I mean, it's not a great target. It's only, a destroyer and an infantry with a transport. So you're not really getting a whole lot out of the sneak attack, but it's the best Japan can do. So they are definitely going to declare war on the U.S. here this turn, because if they didn't, the odds are that the U.S. would, with their die rolls, reach and surpass the 63 they need to enter the conflict themselves. So Japan's going to go ahead and bring the U.S. into the conflict on their turn, attack the Philippines. They'll also probably go after British Malaya again. These transports up here can pick up these men in South Japan and come down. Maybe go after Hong Kong as well. Maybe this last money island, Java. So there's a few things Japan's going to probably do here on turn number 10. We'll let you guys know how it turns out after it's all said and done.